Good morning, everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. The Community of Latin American and Caribbean States Summit continues today in Costa Rica. All 33 Latin American countries are participating. Now, analysts call the event important for regional integration independent of the U.S. or Canada. Today, on the second and final day of CELAC, Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa will take over the presidency pro tempore. Leaders will also sign a 19-page political declaration focused on eradicating poverty and inequality and consolidating Latin American unity. Yesterday, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro noted that Latin America is going through what he called a historic time and predicted that the 21st century will see the end of imperialism. Bolivian President Evo Morales and Cuban President Raul Castro also denounced external intervention in Venezuelan affairs and praised the region's progress towards independence from imperialism. At the summit, Raul Castro also demanded that the United States return the territory of Guantanamo and of its prison and torture facility there. The president argued that restoring diplomatic relations was the start of normalizing bilateral relations with the U.S., but that in order to do that, and in order for it to be possible, he argued that the blockade on Cuba had to be lifted, the Guantanamo territory returned to Cuba, radio and TV broadcasts from the U.S. that violate international norms to be halted, and the Cuban people should be compensated for what he calls the human and economic damage they have endured. On Tuesday, Mexico's Attorney General announced that the government's investigation into the disappearance of 43 students from Ayotzinapa was concluded. That's despite social organizations, supporters, and family denouncing that declaration. Clayton Kahn reports from Mexico.
Here in front of the offices of Mexico's Attorney General, social organizations that support the families of the disappeared 43 Ayotzinapa students symbolically shut down the agency in rejection to the government's declaration on Tuesday that the students were murdered.
We firmly condemn the intention to close the investigation because it seems to us that paves the way to systemic repression.
In the Tuesday press conference, the country's Attorney General Jesus Murillo Caram affirmed that the students were murdered on the night of September 26th by the organized crime group Guerreros Unidos.
The teacher training students were deprived of their liberty, deprived of life, incinerated, and tossed into the San Juan River. In that order, this is the historic truth of the events.
However, the families and classmates of the missing youth categorically reject the government's investigation, demanding that further lines be opened that are not solely based on witness testimony.
The current inquiry and investigation cannot be closed because it's not a conclusive investigation, because there is not yet scientific certainty clearly stating that the colleagues were killed in Cocula.
With their distrust in the official investigation, the families have declared that they will seek further international assistance, taking the Ayotzinapa case to Geneva and the UN's Committee Against Enforced Disappearances. Clayton Kahn, Telesur, Mexico City.
Thanks to Clayton. Now to the Caribbean, where the cannabis movement in St. Lucia is urging the government to follow in the footsteps of Jamaica and decriminalize marijuana. They say it would pave the way for a legal marijuana industry there. As Allison Kenchis reports, the country's prime minister is one of 15 Caribbean leaders supporting the creation of a group to explore decriminalization.
Andre De Caris is the chairman of the Green Party of St. Lucia and head of the cannabis movement. He has been a champion of marijuana tourism and decriminalization. He says Jamaica is heading down the right path by approving a bill to decriminalize possession of small amounts of cannabis and believes St. Lucia should do the same.
I hope we don't have to go through that, but if that is the process, we have started the process. I hope that the rest of the islands would take Jamaica's legislation and modify it to suit their particular needs in each individual territory. So we have basically two choices. Our politicians could either wait on CARICOM or make the move themselves.
The Prime Minister of St. Lucia voiced support for a Caribbean-wide approach to the subject. He expressed support for a decision by 15 Caribbean leaders to establish the CARICOM Commission on decriminalizing marijuana.
We believe very strongly that you cannot legalize marijuana for medical use in one country and not do it in others, because it's going to be chaos in the region. If Jamaica, for example, decides to go ahead with allowing the medical uses of marijuana, St. Vincent does the same thing, then it's going to have tremendous impact here in St. Lucia. How are you going to deal with a Jamaican citizen who travels to St. Lucia, carries so-called marijuana for medicinal purposes, but at the same time, when he arrives in the ports of St. Lucia, he or she is denied entry?
The Prime Minister believes the issue must be looked at from a public health perspective. DeCarey says Caribbean governments are losing out by not following the Jamaica example. For St. Lucia, the marijuana debate is expected to continue for some time. Government officials say there is no rush to judgment, and the Prime Minister says he will await a regional response. From Castries, St. Lucia, Alison Kentish for Telesur English.
Thanks to Allison. The National Congress of Honduras is about to approve a new law pushed by President Juan Hernandez. As our correspondent Gerardo Torres reports, critics say it will cut back on workers' benefits.
In Honduras, teachers, state workers, small producers, police and military have a respective social protection institute. These were created in order to benefit these workers with a retirement fund and to guarantee them access to the Social Security Institute, which gives better medical service than public hospitals. But this is going to change with the new law, which is about to be approved.
We are concerned about the new social protection law because it basically implies that the social protection institutions will disappear. The strategy is to weaken this institution and hand them over to private banks. The other part of the new law regards health services. It means that all health services will be privatized and their control handed over to foundations, NGOs, and banks.
The new law's apparent goal is to hand over workers' retirement savings to private institutions, while opening up the Social Security Institute to anyone who can pay the monthly fee. This will affect workers with lower salaries who more than likely decide to spend their earnings on more urgent matters. The government created Coalianza as a decentralized organism with the purpose of privatizing all state institutions.
With Coalianza, the government wants to privatize everything that is state-owned. With this new law, they intend to privatize the social protection system in the country. We are gradually losing everything that is public.
Social movements haven't been able to organize to protest against the new law, and this new decision will change the social protection system created in the 1950s. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Thanks to Gerardo. Turning to world news now, miners are striking in Ukraine against the privatization of the country's coal industry. Yesterday, miners took to the streets of Kiev to protest. Mining trade union leader Korolyov Tara Antilivovich says that the battle for the mining industry is becoming what she calls a second front in reference to the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine. Kiev authorities are planning to privatize all coal mining enterprises from 2016. All mines that do not go private are set to be liquidated along with the state-owned Ugo-Ukraini company. 89 million euros is to be set aside from Ukrainians' national 2015 budget to prepare for the liquidation of the mines. And in Syria, journalists toured the conflict-torn Kobani yesterday after the Kurdish People's Protection Units announced the recapture of the Syrian-Turkish border town from Islamic State group on Monday. Large parts of Kobani lie in ruins following over 4 months of intense fighting between Kurdish and IS forces. It's also due to the numerous airstrikes by the U.S.-led coalition. The empty streets are now patrolled by Kurdish fighters celebrating their victory amid spent shells and debris. It is believed that over half the town has been destroyed since fighting began back in September. To the United States now, where large parts of the Northeast are digging out after a massive snowstorm Tuesday. The state of Massachusetts appears to be the hardest hit by the winter blast, where in some parts 3 feet of snow fell Tuesday. The storm wiped out power for all 12,000 residents of Nantucket Island. The system brought with it hurricane-force winds up to 78 miles per hour. Along with the snow, it also caused some flooding.
The 4:30 a.m. p.m. high tide was followed by
We end today with a safe sex campaign in Brazil as the country's famous Carnival celebrations draw near. The Brazilian government launched the campaign yesterday and will promote AIDS testing with centers in popular Carnival hubs. The campaign will also see the distribution of 120 million condoms. The government has run the campaign each year since 1986 during the run-up to Carnival. Still, Ministry of Health statistics show that just under half of Carnival attendees still aren't using condoms. 400,000 people in Brazil are currently receiving treatment for AIDS, with 22 antiretroviral treatments still available through the public health system. Plenty more on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Thursday.